The last thing I expected was for that night to take such a terrifying turn. After leaving the hospital, exhausted but relieved that my daughter had survived, I stepped into a nightmare. Ethan stood there, with her, Isabella. My world shattered in an instant. I screamed, demanding answers, but his face twisted with rage. Before I could react, he grabbed a heavy metal candle holder and swung it with full force. Pain tore through my arm as I collapsed. But my fear wasn't for myself, it was for Lily. I was still holding Lily. And what happened next was so unbelievable, so horrifying, that even now, I can barely bring myself to say it. My name is Grace Walker, and a year ago, I thought my life was perfect. At 30 years old, I had everything I had ever dreamed of: a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, and a stable home. I was married to Ethan Walker, a man I once believed was my soulmate. We lived in a beautiful house in Brooksville, a quiet city where I had always imagined raising a family. Our daughter, Lily, had just turned 4. She was the light of my life, my little girl who filled every corner of our home with laughter and warmth. From the outside, our life seemed like a dream. Ethan was a successful entrepreneur, always busy but always providing. At 34, he was charming, ambitious, and carried himself with the confidence of a man who had built his own success. I was a stay-at-home mom, dedicating my days to raising Lily, playing with her, and planning her future. She was my whole world, and every time I looked into her bright, curious eyes, I felt an overwhelming sense of love and purpose. Ethan was often away on business trips, working hard to ensure we lived comfortably. I trusted him completely. I never questioned his late nights at the office or the sudden trips out of town. I believed in our marriage, in our little family. I thought that, no matter what, we were building a future together. I had no idea that the perfect life I believed in was nothing more than an illusion, and that everything was about to come crashing down around me. Looking back, the warning signs had always been there. I just didn't see them. Or maybe I didn't want to. Ethan had always been distant, his attention divided between work and his endless business trips, but I convinced myself that it was normal. That was what husbands did, right? They worked hard to provide for their families. But the truth was, I had been lying to myself for years. It all started unraveling on a seemingly ordinary day. Just after Lily's 3rd birthday, Ethan told me he had an important work trip. He kissed me on the forehead, told me he would be away for a few days, and left. It wasn't unusual. I had heard the same story before. I smiled, wished him a safe trip, and went back to caring for Lily. I had no idea that this trip would be different. A few days later, Lily caught a cold. At first, I wasn't worried. Children get sick all the time. I gave her medicine, let her rest, and waited for her fever to break. But by the 3rd day, things took a terrifying turn. Her fever spiked dangerously high, and she could barely keep her eyes open. Her little body felt weak in my arms, and her soft, exhausted cries sent waves of panic through me. Something was seriously wrong. I grabbed my phone and called Ethan, my hands trembling as I held it to my ear. When he finally picked up, relief washed over me, until I heard the coldness in his voice. "Ethan," I gasped, trying to keep my voice steady, "Lily is really sick. She has a high fever, and I don't know what to do." There was a pause, then a sigh. "I'm about to board a plane, Grace. You'll have to handle it. She's probably fine. Just give her some medicine." I felt my heart drop. "Ethan, it's serious. She needs a doctor." His tone hardened. "I'm not canceling a business trip over a little fever. You're her mother. Handle it." And then, just like that, he hung up. I stood there, frozen, the phone still pressed against my ear. My mind refused to process what had just happened. How could he be so heartless? But I didn't have time to dwell on it. Lily needed me. Without another second of hesitation, I rushed her to the hospital, praying the entire way. I had no idea that this night would change my life forever. The emergency room was packed, but I didn't care. I rushed to the front desk, clutching Lily tightly in my arms. Her little body was burning up, her breath shallow. I begged the receptionist to help us, my voice shaking as I fought back tears. A doctor, Dr. James, finally examined her. He was a serious-looking man in his 40s, and as he checked Lily's vitals, his expression darkened. I knew something was very wrong. The fever has caused complications in her brain, he said, his voice calm but urgent. She needs surgery right away. It's the only way to save her. The room spun around me. Surgery? My baby needed brain surgery? My throat tightened as I struggled to find my voice. How much will it cost? Dr. James hesitated before answering. You need to make a $300,000 deposit before we can proceed. My heart stopped. 300,000? I whispered, as if saying it out loud would make it less real. I didn't have that kind of money. We had savings, but not nearly enough. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone. Ethan. He had to help. I dialed his number. No answer. I sent texts. No reply. I left voicemails, my voice breaking as I begged him to call me back. I saw that he read my messages, but he never responded. Tears blurred my vision as I stared at my phone. My husband, the father of my child, ignoring us in the darkest moment of our lives. I sank into a chair, holding Lily's tiny hand, feeling helpless and lost. I had never cried so hard in my life. What was I supposed to do? Let my daughter die because I didn't have the money? And then it hit me. I had no choice. I ran home, tore through my jewelry box, and grabbed everything valuable I owned. My wedding ring, family heirlooms, every piece of jewelry I had ever cherished. I rushed back to the hospital, my hands shaking as I sold everything to a jeweler nearby. But even after selling it all, it wasn't enough. Desperate, I begged the jeweler to lend me the rest. Maybe he saw the panic in my eyes or heard the desperation in my voice because, by some miracle, he agreed. I returned to the hospital, my hands shaking as I handed over the money. Dr. James and his team moved fast, preparing Lily for surgery. The longest hours of my life began. I sat in the waiting room, alone and terrified, whispering prayers into the silence. And then, finally, after what felt like an eternity, Dr. James appeared. He gave me a small, reassuring smile. The surgery was a success. She's going to be okay. I collapsed to my knees, overwhelmed with relief. Lily was alive. That was all that mattered. But even in that moment of hope, one painful question refused to leave my mind. Where was Ethan? Why hadn't he cared enough to answer my calls? I didn't know it then, but that question was about to destroy the life I had built. Lily spent several days in the hospital recovering. I refused to leave her side, watching over her every moment. She was still weak, but she was alive, and that was all that mattered. The nightmare was over, or so I thought. I was exhausted, physically, emotionally, mentally. I had barely eaten or slept in days, but I told myself that everything would be okay once I got home. I just wanted to lay Lily in her bed, let her rest, and finally breathe. The day we were discharged, I held Lily close as I drove back home. As I turned onto our street, my heart skipped a beat when I saw Ethan's car parked in the driveway. For a brief moment, I felt relief. Maybe he was here to explain himself. Maybe he had realized his mistake and was waiting to make things right. Maybe he was finally going to act like the husband and father he was supposed to be. But as I walked up to the front door, I heard something that made my stomach turn. Laughter. A woman's laughter. I hesitated for only a second before pushing the door open. And then, in that single moment, everything shattered. Ethan was standing in the middle of our living room, looking comfortable, too comfortable, with a woman I had never seen before. She was tall, strikingly beautiful, and she had the kind of confidence that made my blood boil. Her hand rested on his chest. Her smile was smug. They weren't just standing together, they were together. Lily whimpered in my arms, sensing my tension. I stared at Ethan, my voice shaking. Who is this? Ethan turned to me, too calm, too casual, as if nothing about this was wrong. Grace, he said, as if my name was an inconvenience. This is Isabella. We're together now. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. Together? My throat went dry, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. What do you mean? I demanded, my voice rising. Ethan, I just came back from the hospital with our daughter. Do you even care what she's been through? What I've been through? Ethan's response was like a knife to the heart. I've made my decision, he said, his voice cold. You and Lily can manage on your own from now on. I don't need sick people dragging me down. Sick people. I felt my knees go weak. Was this really the man I married? The father of my child? The room was spinning. I could hear Isabella snicker beside him, and the sound made my skin crawl. It's nothing personal, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Ethan, and I just have something you wouldn't understand. Something inside me snapped. How dare you? I shouted, finally breaking free from the shock. I've been holding this family together while you were off playing with your little girlfriend. Do you even know what I had to do to save our daughter's life? I sold everything. My wedding ring. My mother's necklace. Because you, my voice broke, because you didn't care enough to answer your phone. Ethan shrugged, his face blank, emotionless. That's your problem, Grace. Not mine. Before I could even process his words, he turned to the door, opened it, and gestured outside. You need to leave. His tone was final. I've already packed your things. They're outside. I blinked. My breath caught in my throat. You're kicking us out? Where are we supposed to go, Ethan? I whispered, my voice breaking. This is Lily's home. But he didn't hesitate. It's my house, he said, his words like a slap to the face. You'll figure it out. Behind him, Isabella leaned against the doorframe, smirking. Good luck, Grace, she purred, her voice mocking. I felt Lily's tiny arms tighten around me, her innocent face buried in my shoulder. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew enough to be afraid. Something inside me hardened. I stood tall, even as tears ran down my face. You'll regret this, Ethan, I said, my voice steady. You're a coward and a liar, and I will make sure the world knows it. Ethan didn't even flinch. Do what you need to do, he said, slamming the door in my face. And just like that, I was homeless. Standing outside in the cold night, a mix of fury and despair filled me. I looked down at Lily, her warm little body pressed against mine. I held her close and whispered, more to myself than to her. It's going to be okay. We'll get through this. I promise. But deep down, I had no idea where to go. All I knew was that I wasn't giving up. I stood frozen on the doorstep, my mind racing. The shock of betrayal was one thing, but the rage building inside me was something else entirely. Ethan had thrown me and Lily out like we were nothing. I had given this man everything, and he had tossed us aside without a second thought. But I wasn't leaving without a fight. I turned back toward the door, my hands trembling with fury. I pounded my fist against the wood. You don't get to do this, Ethan. I yelled, my voice breaking. You don't get to destroy our family and just walk away. Inside, I heard footsteps approaching, and a second later, the door flew open. Ethan stood there, his face twisted with irritation. Isabella stood behind him, her arms crossed, an amused smirk on her lips. Are you seriously going to make a scene? He snapped. Just leave, Grace. This conversation is over. No, I spat, stepping closer. I gave you everything. I saved our daughter's life without a single word from you. And now you're standing here, pretending none of it ever mattered? I deserve answers, Ethan. I barely noticed how tense his posture became, how his hands clenched into tight fists. Grace, I don't owe you anything. His voice was sharp, like a blade cutting through the night. I told you to leave. Take your daughter and get the hell out of my house. Your house. I let out a bitter laugh. Do you even hear yourself? This was supposed to be our home. Ours. But you ruined everything. Ethan's calm mask cracked. I saw it. The way his jaw tightened, his eyes flashed with something dark. He wasn't just annoyed anymore. He was furious. And then, before I could react, he grabbed the heavy metal candle holder from the table next to the door. I barely had time to process what was happening before he swung it at me. Pain exploded through my arm as I instinctively raised it to shield myself. The impact was brutal, knocking me backward. A deep bruise instantly formed, a sharp ache spreading through my entire arm. My legs gave out for a split second and I almost dropped Lily. She let out a frightened cry, clutching onto me, her small fingers digging into my shoulders. I gasped, stumbling, my vision blurred with shock and pain. Ethan stood over me, the candle holder still clutched in his grip, his chest heaving. My breath hitched. He had actually hit me. For a moment, everything around me blurred. This wasn't my husband. This wasn't the man I had spent years with, the man I had trusted. This was a stranger, a monster. And I knew then, without a doubt, that there was no going back. Lily's soft sobs snapped me back to reality. My daughter had just watched her father attack me. That was all that mattered. I forced myself to stand up. My entire body was trembling, but I held Lily closer, shielding her. I looked Ethan dead in the eyes. "You'll pay for this," I whispered, my voice raw. And this time, I wasn't just talking about his betrayal. I was talking about everything. I turned around, cradling Lily against me, and walked away, into the night, into the unknown, into the beginning of something new. But I wasn't broken. I was angry, and I was ready for revenge. I walked away from that house, from my past, from my pain, from the man who had just shattered everything I had left. My arm throbbed from the blow, and every step felt heavier than the last. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I had Lily in my arms, and she was all that mattered now. My vision blurred with pain and exhaustion. My arm was swollen from where Ethan had struck me with a metal candle holder, and I could feel a deep throbbing ache spreading through my muscles. I wasn't sure if my arm was broken or just badly bruised, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. I needed to get to a hospital. I spotted a cab parked near the street corner. The driver must have seen the panic on my face because he didn't hesitate to let me in. I clutched Lily tightly as I gave him the address of the nearest hospital. The bright hospital lights stung my tired eyes as I stepped inside the emergency room. The receptionist took one look at my injury and Lily's sleepy, frightened face and quickly called for a doctor. A nurse guided me to a small examination room. My arm was already turning a deep shade of purple. The pain was getting worse. A doctor arrived shortly after. Dr. Patel, his name tag read. He examined my arm, his expression tight with concern. "You're lucky," he said. "No fractures, but you have a severe bruise and some soft tissue damage. I'll prescribe pain medication, but you need to avoid lifting anything heavy for a while." I let out a shaky breath. "I don't have that option," I whispered, glancing at Lily, who was curled up beside me. Dr. Patel's expression softened. "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" I hesitated.
No.
I didn't. Not anymore. Then I thought of Michelle. I reached into my pocket and dialed her number. She picked up immediately. "Grace." Her voice was filled with concern. Tears burned my eyes. "Michelle, I need help." She didn't ask questions. "Tell me where you are." "I'm coming right now." By the time I was discharged, Michelle was already waiting for me outside the hospital. She rushed forward, wrapping her arms around me in a tight hug. "You're safe now," she whispered. "We'll figure this out together." I let out a slow, shaky breath. I wasn't alone. And for the first time since Ethan had slammed that door in my face, I felt a tiny spark of hope. The shelter was small but warm. Safe. Michelle led me inside, guiding me past the quiet hum of voices and the distant sound of children playing in the background. She brought me to her small office, where she handed me a blanket and a cup of tea. I didn't realize I was shaking until I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. Lily curled up beside me, already dozing off in exhaustion. I brushed a strand of hair from her face, my chest tightening at how small and fragile she looked. Michelle sat across from me, studying me with eyes filled with both anger and worry. "Tell me everything," she said softly.
So I did.
I told her about Ethan ignoring my calls while Lily was dying in the hospital. About how I sold everything I owned to save my daughter while my husband was off with another woman. About how he attacked me with a candle holder and threw me out like garbage. Michelle's hands curled into fists on the table. "That bastard," she muttered. "I always had a bad feeling about him. But this is worse than I ever imagined." I swallowed hard. "It doesn't even make sense, Michelle. Why did he do this? Why turn so cruel all of a sudden?" Michelle hesitated, then leaned forward. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Grace. I think there's more to this. A man doesn't just throw his family away overnight. Something else is going on here." I frowned, confused. "Like what?" She exhaled, tapping her fingers on the table. "I know someone who can help us find out. A private investigator. His name is Austin. He's good at uncovering the truth. If Ethan is hiding something, and I'm almost certain he is, Austin will find it." A private investigator? The thought sent a chill down my spine. But deep down, I knew Michelle was right. I needed answers.
"Call him," I said.
The next day, Michelle introduced me to Austin Reed. He was in his early 50s, sharp-eyed, and spoke in a calm, measured voice. The kind of man who noticed everything. He sat across from me in Michelle's office, flipping through a small notebook as he listened to my story. When I finished, he nodded thoughtfully. "I'll look into him," Austin said. "If Ethan's hiding something, I'll find it." I didn't know what to expect, but something told me that the truth was going to be far worse than I had imagined. Days passed, each one filled with an unbearable mix of rage, heartbreak, and exhaustion. I focused on Lily's recovery, trying to hide my pain every time she looked up at me with her innocent eyes. She had already been through so much. She didn't need to see her mother falling apart. But at night, when she was asleep, I lay awake in the shelter's small room, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened. Why had Ethan done this? Was it just about Isabella? Or was there something even darker lurking beneath the surface? I got my answer a week later. Michelle called me into her office, and the moment I stepped inside, I saw Austin waiting for me. His face was unreadable, but the look in his eyes told me he had found something. Something big. He gestured for me to sit. My hands felt ice cold as I lowered myself into the chair. "Grace," he started, his voice calm but firm. "You need to brace yourself. What I found isn't just about cheating. It's much worse." My stomach twisted. "Tell me." Austin opened the folder on the desk and spread out documents, photos, and financial records. My eyes scanned them quickly, my heart pounding louder with each word I read. "Ethan and Isabella aren't just having an affair," Austin explained. "They're business partners, and not in a good way. They've been involved in fraud, money laundering, and illegal business deals for years. His entire company? A front for criminal activity." My breath caught in my throat. "You're saying he's a criminal?" Austin nodded. "And Isabella isn't just his mistress. She's his partner in crime. They've been moving stolen funds into offshore accounts, running scams through fake investments, and using his business as a cover. They're being watched by the authorities, but so far, they've managed to stay under the radar." The room tilted beneath me. I had suspected betrayal, but I never imagined this. This can't be real," I whispered, my voice cracking. But deep down, I knew it was.
It all made sense now.
Ethan's cold indifference. His sudden decision to throw me and Lily away. We were liabilities. He knew that if things went south, I'd be a loose end. Someone who could talk. Someone who could ruin everything. Michelle reached for my hand, her grip firm and steady. "Grace, we have to take this to the police." I swallowed hard. My pulse raced. Ethan had already hurt me once. If he found out I was digging into his secrets, what else would he do? But then I thought about Lily. I thought about the bruise on my arm from the candle holder. I thought about the fear in my daughter's eyes when he attacked me. And suddenly, I wasn't afraid anymore. I looked up at Austin. "What do we do next?" Austin and Michelle exchanged a look before Austin leaned forward, his voice low and serious. "We need to build a solid case against Ethan. Right now, we have strong evidence, but to ensure he doesn't slip through the cracks, we need more." I nodded, my mind racing. "What kind of evidence?" Austin tapped the documents on the table. "Financial records, witness statements, and any communication that links him directly to the fraud." I've already compiled a lot, but if we want the police to take immediate action, we need undeniable proof, something they can't ignore. Michelle crossed her arms. Grace, do you have access to any of Ethan's documents? Bank statements? Emails? Anything? I thought about it for a moment. Not since he threw me out. He probably changed everything by now. Austin nodded. That's what I figured. But we have another option. Ethan's business partners, some of them may not even know they're being used in his schemes. If we find someone who feels cheated by him, we could get a testimony that exposes him. I clenched my jaw. So we find someone willing to talk. Austin smirked. Already ahead of you. I've been tracking a former employee of Ethan's, a guy named Daniel Carter. He left the company 6 months ago under suspicious circumstances. I have a feeling he knows something. Michelle exhaled. And what about Isabella? Austin's expression darkened. She's just as deep in this as Ethan. If she ever feels like he's going to turn on her, she might be the first one to flip. That thought made my stomach churn. Isabella had already destroyed my life in more ways than one, but if she could help bring Ethan down, I wasn't above using that to my advantage. Michelle reached for my hand again. Grace, this is your chance. You've been through hell, but this is how you get justice. Are you ready for that? I looked at my daughter, peacefully asleep on the small couch in the office. I thought about how close I had come to losing her. I thought about how Ethan had stood in that doorway, completely unmoved, while I begged for our home, our life, our family. Then I thought about how he had lifted that candle holder and hit me without hesitation. My hands curled into fists. I turned back to Austin, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Let's take him down. Austin wasted no time. The very next day, he tracked down Daniel Carter, the former employee who had left Ethan's company under suspicious circumstances. I waited anxiously at the shelter while Austin met with him. My stomach was in knots the entire time, my mind racing with questions. Would Daniel be willing to talk? Would he even have useful information? When Austin returned later that evening, his expression told me everything. He's in, Austin said as he set his notebook down on Michelle's desk. And he gave us more than we expected. I sat up straighter, my pulse quickening. What do you mean? Austin flipped open his notes. Daniel wasn't just any employee, he was one of Ethan's accountants. And he figured out what Ethan was doing before he left. Michelle's eyes widened. Wait, so he knew about the fraud? Austin nodded. Not only did he know, but he also has documents to prove it. He took copies before he quit, just in case Ethan ever came after him. I felt my hands tremble. This was it. We had him. He sent me everything, Austin continued. Bank transactions, wire transfers, offshore accounts, all tied directly to Ethan and Isabella. He leaned forward. This is more than enough to bring them down. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly followed by something else. Fear. Ethan had already proven what he was capable of. If he found out what we were doing, what would he do next? Michelle must have sensed my hesitation because she reached out and squeezed my hand. Grace, we're almost there. The police will protect you and Lily. You're not alone in this. I swallowed hard and nodded. So, what's next? Austin exhaled. I'll take this to the authorities. With this level of proof, they won't just investigate, they'll move fast. I clenched my jaw. Then let's do it. 2 days later, it happened. Austin had taken everything to the authorities, and they had moved faster than any of us expected. That evening, I sat in the shelter's common room, my hands gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I was waiting for the moment that Ethan's world came crashing down. Then it happened. A news alert popped up on my phone screen. Breaking news: police raid local business for fraud and money laundering. CEO and partner taken into custody. I barely had time to process it before Michelle came rushing in, her eyes wide with shock. Grace, she gasped, shoving her phone in front of me. It was Ethan. There on the screen was a photo of him being led away in handcuffs. My breath caught in my throat. We did it. I had spent so long feeling powerless, feeling broken.
But now?
Now he was the one who had lost everything. The moment I had been waiting for finally arrived, Ethan's trial. Despite everything he had done, part of me expected him to somehow escape justice. He had always been a man who could talk his way out of anything, a man who thrived on control. But this time, he had no power left. Michelle and Austin sat beside me in the courtroom, their presence a steady source of strength. Lily wasn't with me. She was safe with one of the shelter's volunteers. She didn't need to see this. When they brought Ethan in, my entire body tensed. He looked different, thinner, paler, and angrier. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by a prison jumpsuit, and for the first time in years, I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before.
Fear.
I held my head high as the trial began. My lawyer, Brittany Reynolds, was sharp and unshakable. She laid out the entire case against Ethan and Isabella, detailing their fraud, money laundering, and offshore accounts. Then came the part that mattered most to me. Brittany turned toward the jury, her voice steady. Beyond the financial crimes, Ethan Walker is also guilty of domestic violence. He assaulted his wife, Grace Walker, in their home while she held their 4-year-old daughter. I swallowed hard as all eyes turned to me. This was it, my moment to finally tell my story. I walked to the stand, my hands slightly trembling as I took a deep breath. I swore to tell the truth. Then I began. I told them everything. How Ethan had ignored my desperate calls while Lily was dying in the hospital. How I had sold everything I owned to save her life while he was off with another woman. How I came home to find him with Isabella. And how, when I refused to leave, he attacked me with a heavy metal candle holder, nearly causing me to drop my child. I saw the way the jury's faces hardened as I spoke. They felt my pain. They saw the truth. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Brittany turned toward Ethan, her voice sharp. "Mr. Walker, do you deny physically assaulting your wife?" Ethan shifted in his seat. His usual arrogance flickered, his confidence cracking. I was just trying to get her to leave. Brittany didn't back down. By attacking her while she was holding your child? Ethan had no response. The courtroom murmured. He had lost. He knew it. We all knew it. It didn't take long for the jury to reach a decision.
Guilty.
Ethan and Isabella were both sentenced to long-term prison time for fraud and money laundering. But Ethan's punishment didn't stop there. He was also convicted of aggravated assault and domestic violence, adding additional years to his sentence. The judge's voice rang through the courtroom. This court grants full custody of Lily Walker to her mother, Grace Walker. Additionally, Mrs. Walker is awarded ownership of all legally acquired assets previously belonging to Mr. Walker, ensuring financial security for herself and her child. Tears streamed down my face. It was over. I turned to Michelle, who grabbed my hand and squeezed it. "You did it, Grace," she whispered. "You stood up for yourself." For Lily. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. 2 months after the trial, I officially filed for divorce. Ethan was already rotting in prison, and Isabella, once so smug and confident, was now nothing more than a disgraced criminal. The divorce process was quick and clean. Ethan didn't even try to fight it. What could he do? He had lost everything. The day the papers were finalized, I sat in the shelter's small common room, staring at the document in my hands. It was over.
For real this time.
Michelle sat beside me, grinning. "How does it feel to be free?" I let out a slow breath. Like I can finally breathe again. We both laughed. Lily ran into the room, giggling as she held up a drawing she had made. "Mommy, look," she beamed. I looked at the picture. It was a drawing of me and her, standing in front of a little house with a bright yellow sun shining above us. My throat tightened. I pulled her into my arms, kissing her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered. "We're happy now." And for the first time in forever, I truly believed it.